Alex Show podcast.
Smart Alex Show, baby!
What's happening, my people? Welcome to episode number 16 of the Smart Alex Show podcast. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Today, I had the honor and pleasure of hosting the Vice President of Business Development at Overtime, Brandon Rhodes, on the platform. Had an awesome conversation with him. First met him through the Texas Business and Sports Summit here at UT Austin when he flew down from Brooklyn to attend. In today's episode, we cover a number of things. One, how he started the Michigan Business and Sports Conference. And UT and building our sports conference out, we kind of look at them as like, they've done an incredible job. So we talk about how he founded that, how he broke into the sports industry, how he first broke into marketing at Gatorade, and now how he is running business development at Overtime. And if you're not familiar with Overtime, you definitely need to be, whether you're in the sports industry or not. Essentially, Overtime builds disruptive new sports leagues aimed at capturing the next generation of sports fans and athletes. They run Overtime 7, which is a 7-on-7 football endeavor. That space is growing. They run Overtime Elite, which this is the one that's been generating headlines dating back to last year. Essentially, they serve as an alternative route to the NBA level, offering elite prospects an alternative route. Instead of having to go the NCAA route and play D1 at the college level, they can go to the Overtime Elite League, play with other elite competition, and they get their own curriculum that is just so unique to anything else going on. So it's a very disruptive and innovative thing they've got going on with the OTE League. This very week, they're generating headlines with their new deal with Amazon Prime, diving into the streaming game. Essentially, so this is a pro basketball league for 16 to 20-year-olds, state-of-the-art facility in Atlanta, Georgia. Other entities are even using the facility, like the PFL, which is the main competitor. The UFC has hosted a couple events there. But essentially, here's what you need to know. Players receive a minimum salary of $100K annually, signing bonus, shares in Overtime's business. So, from the perspective of having equity, that is massive. If you believe this business is going to grow, they get health insurance, $100,000 scholarship money if they decide not to go to the NBA. But essentially, what makes this so unique and cool and innovative from my perspective is that you don't have to go to the NCAA route and pretend you're a student that's going to, just be a regular student athlete. You're going to the league, so why not start preparing now, right? So you get a 4-to-1 student to teacher ratio, right? And the curriculum is geared to not only better suit you as an NBA professional, but a professional in the business world during your career and post-career once you stop playing basketball. They have classes on financial literacy, social media, media training, mental health and wellness, much more. The people running it are incredible. Former NBA player, UConn head coach Kevin Ollie heads their player development. They have a partnership with Topps to create basketball trading cards for their athletes, brand partnerships with Gatorade, State Farm. We know all the NBA Chris Paul commercials with State Farm and how tapped in they are into the sports space with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in their commercials. They have a partnership with GMC, many others, with Meta, formerly known as Facebook, to develop a virtual reality set of content for their league. They have signed the #1 recruit from the class of 2024, multiple top 23 prospects, the Thompson twins, Amen and Asar, who are NBA bound. They have a whopping 6% of active NBA players invested into this league. So obviously, from an NBA player perspective, they're bought into the league. And I think here's another important part that, even if you're not into sports, here's why you need to be aware of what Overtime's doing, what Overtime Elite's doing. You have massive entities backing OTE. Essentially, you've got Jeff Bezos through Bezos Expeditions, Morgan Stanley, Sapphire Sport, Micromanagement Ventures, which is the family office of former NBA Commissioner David Stern, Drake, Quavo, KD, UT's very own. I'm repping the KD jersey right here. Just a lot of support and financial backing behind this, and it's very cool to have had the opportunity to pick Brandon's brain about where Overtime is going, and also how he broke into the space, how we can break into the space, and tips and tools just to become better people and succeed in whatever endeavor of life we're trying to go. And specifically, if you're trying to tap into the sports space. So with that, I'll let you guys enjoy the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible guest with us on the podcast today, a graduate of the prestigious University of Michigan Stephen M. Ross School of Business, where he founded the Michigan Sports Business Conference, which now hosts sports industry titans year in and year out. He then stayed in the Midwest, but unlike Braun in 11, he took his talents north to the windy city of Chicago and went on to work with one of the most well-known brands on the globe, PepsiCo, on their legendary Gatorade team. He worked in athletic equipment innovation and design, digital tech and innovation, global brand activation, and then led all of digital strategy at Gatorade. From there, this young man then made the jump to the disruptive, innovative, new talk of the industry and talk of the town, Overtime, where he started in brand partnerships and business development and now serves as the vice president of business development at Overtime, leading partnerships for Overtime and Overtime Elite. It is with great honor that I present to you guys our awesome guest today, Brandon Rhodes.
Thanks for having me, man. Excited.
Yeah, no, appreciate you being here, man. Let's get it started off with this. So obviously, you know, I know, anyone that follows the sports industry knows, but if you could describe Overtime to the people from, you know, its inception in 2016 to the game-changing stuff y'all are doing now in 2022, what would you say Overtime is, man?
We're a sports brand for the next generation, and that's intentionally broad because when we first started, well before me, Dan and Zach started Overtime with the intention of capturing this young Gen Z, young millennial audience that wasn't really being served by the traditional sports landscape. And it wasn't about, oh, we're going to go and do this type of content or that type of content. We're going to go do these events. It was more about how do we capture the imagination, the minds, and the loyalty in the community that is growing larger and larger and more influential of Gen Z. And this stuff today, as of a couple of years ago, is common knowledge that, Gen Z, of course, they're sports fans, but they're consuming their content so differently. Their understanding of what sports is so different than it was even when I was growing up as a kind of middling or older millennial. And those were some insights that Dan and Zach had started to see early before they were really published in all these studies. So it's always been about capturing kind of Gen Z young millennials. That's been from the start. It's always been about building a brand, not just a pass-through entity that covers sports, but something that people really love and feel a part of. And I think that's been the difference from day one, even since I interviewed probably 5 years ago now to this point. And understanding their mindset was really about building a brand and community. And then once you have that, you can extend it in so many different ways, which you've seen us do, from starting and really owning kind of the youth next gen basketball space, to getting into football and having a big footprint there, to then apparel and lifestyle brand where everyone wears the O, and if a kid sees me in the airport, they go crazy, to launching our own basketball league, to getting into all these different areas in sports and having trading cards and media rights deals and all these other things. So if you would have asked, people 4 years ago, they might have said, okay, Overtime is kind of the next ESPN. But now you can't even really say that because it's so many different things, because at the core fundamental, it's a brand that Gen Z really resonates with and cares about and loves.
Absolutely, man. No, a lot of great points there. And it's interesting, like you said, maybe a couple of years ago, people might have said like, oh, it's the next ESPN. And I know, like, in the past couple of years in interacting with your content digitally, I thought it was maybe like some, kind of in the same space as like a House of Hoops, but geared towards a younger generation maybe, and focusing a lot on the high school space. But now it's like you guys are doing so many different things, from OTE and OT7 with football. It's just like, it's a crazy thing, man. And mentioning, media rights deals, congrats to you guys on the Amazon Prime deal, man. How can people tune in?
Oh, it's super exciting for us. And we're going to have 20 games on Amazon Prime, all live streamed. So if you have Prime, you go to Amazon Prime Video, the same place you watch Thursday Night Football, and you'll see Overtime, which is just an incredible moment for us and our whole company and everybody that's worked at Overtime to kind of start from just having a social account, getting all the way to launching a league, and then having one of the biggest and most influential companies in the world work with you is pretty cool.
Absolutely, man. It's big time, and it's just so wild to see like how, the past few years, and like speaking with Fef, like when I first met Fef, I think it was like before the pandemic. She came into my business sports media class, and she was like, there's going to be this inflection point between linear television and streaming slash, direct to consumer, all that good stuff, where you're going to see a lot of these streaming and tech giants kind of come in and start buying media rights. So it's been interesting to see how Amazon Prime, like, with Thursday Night Football now, and they've got, Richard Sherman and all these great names on there doing the cast. And it's just wild to see like that, and Apple TV with MLS, seeing that whole space shake out, man. It's a wild evolution.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time to be in the sports business. I mean, when isn't it an exciting time? Because it's something we love and we care about. But I often think back again, and a big inflection point for my career is coming to Overtime, which has been a little over 4.5 years. And I tell people, like, when I first started Overtime, we weren't really thinking about, the industry wasn't really, unless you worked at these companies, thinking about like legalized sports betting, right? Like a lot of the leagues were against it. And now you can't watch a NBA or NFL game without seeing betting odds or commercials from FanDuel and DraftKings or whatever it may be. The streaming wars weren't really a topic of conversation, right? Netflix was the only player. Now everybody's getting into it. ESPN has a direct consumer product. Like you said, Amazon and Apple, some of the biggest companies in the world, are getting more into it. So that's a completely new wave. Web3 innovation, NFTs, that's been a whole thing that's kind of taken the industry by storm. And obviously right now there's a cool down, but we'll see how that has an impact over the long-term horizon. And that's just a few things that come to top of mind, but the pace of innovation right now is incredible. I mean, even back then you would think of esports as kind of a phenomenon maybe in the East. But even esports has been a big thing. So there's just so many opportunities, especially for young people who are looking to get into the industry, to see these areas that are emerging and maybe get a little more experience, or things that they're frankly just fans of, and naturally, because they're the ones driving the trends. You can come in and make an impact in these industries pretty quickly if you're looking towards what's next, versus always just thinking about what's been big in the past.
Absolutely, man. No, I love what you said about the pace of innovation. Like, things are just taking off so rapidly. Whereas like a couple years ago, you saw FanDuel and DraftKings with the DFS stuff. And now you see, the Manning family doing commercials with I don't remember, it's Caesars, right? And then you got like Win is involved too. And then you got like Dapper Labs and the N3, the Web3 space. So it's shaking out, to evolve really quickly. And I'm very interested to see where it continues to evolve, because with these tech giants, they've got deep pockets. So it's kind of a question of like, how do the traditional linear television companies and networks compete? But you said a good point there in terms of like, there's never been a better time to get involved in the space because there's so much going on. I wanna take it back to like when you were at Michigan, man. Like, how did you know you wanted to get involved in this space in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm one of the people who's been very lucky, to kind of have a sense of what I wanted to do for a very long time. And I think back to middle school, I was a very entrepreneurial kid, and I give a lot of credit to both my parents, my mom and my dad, for spurring that in me and fostering that entrepreneurship sense of entrepreneurship. I remember I didn't want to go mow lawns or do that type of thing. And my birthday was coming up, and I love basketball. I played basketball my whole life. And my mom helped me do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament with all my friends from school. I had them all pay entry fees. I got trophies. I had my mom do a barbecue. Like, it was legit, and I had a flyer and everything. And it was kind of the first time where I had kind of created something from scratch that became a business. I made some money on it, but it was also just like a really fun thing to do with my friends. And I kind of was one of the kid who was just like obsessed with all things, watching every show on ESPN after school, playing basketball, playing every sport I could get my hands on. And my mom kind of saw this flyer, which was for a summer camp, that said, "Oh, you could be in the sports industry or go to sports management." I think it was University of Miami. Like, I was too young at the time, but basically from then on, I was kind of like, "Oh, okay, I could get into sports." I didn't know that was a thing, and I really also was a big randomly like loved Law and Order and all these legal shows. So I was kind of like, okay, well, sports agent, that's the route. That's what I want to do. So basically, from middle school on, like, I thought I wanted to be a sports agent. And then I went to high school. I told my guidance counselor, she was like, "Okay, so you just watch Jerry Maguire or what's up?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what Jerry Maguire is. Never even heard of it."
I don't even know
Um,
either. I've heard of it, but I don't know.
well, you got to watch it. It is a classic. But I didn't watch it until college.
Yeah.
But basically, I had known and I had pursued this path. And then um, I went on a college campus visit when I was a freshman because my sister was a junior, and I went to University of Michigan, and they were talking all about the sport management program and how awesome it was. And from then on, I kind of knew that that could be a great pathway for me to, get into Michigan. I ended up, getting there, doing sport management, which is in the School of Kinesiology, double majoring in the business school. And I was lucky that a lot of my freshman hallmates were talking about the business school, because frankly, I really came for sport management.
Right.
But the business school was, the number one ranked undergrad business school in the country. And because they were all talking about it, I was like, oh, maybe I need to look into this.
Sure.
And I figured out there's a dual degree program. And then I did a Spanish minor. Um, so I had 2 degrees uh, and a minor within 4 years, and I realized my freshman year a couple things that were very important. One, that becoming an agent was a very hard route, and I really didn't come from much. I moved from home to home. Like, I didn't have much growing up, and I had no connections in the industry. So I thought, I wanted to do something that was a little more immediate, where I could come in, make some money, get some experience versus working in the mailroom. And I fell in love with marketing pretty early on. But the other thing that I learned was, like, that's obvious. Everyone tells you this, but networking and internships are the two things that are going to help you get into this industry. So I, first of all, went to the career office and said, I need an internship my freshman summer. And they were kind of like, internships are for juniors. But then I looked at not all, but some of my classmates, like, they had the dream internships their freshman year. And I'm like, what is going on here? Oh, well, it's because my dad knows so and so, or my mom knows so and so. So that's when I knew that I had to flip the switch and I had to network harder than everybody else in order to just get to an even playing field. So that's what really propelled me in my career, was getting really good and comfortable networking and shooting my shot and not worrying about rejection. And then ultimately led me to creating the Michigan Sport Business Conference when I was on campus, to help, well, one, to help kids like me who didn't have that access, but also to propel my own career too.
Absolutely, man. No, a lot of great points there. And it's dope to see that, like, you had this innately in you as a kid. Like, the business you're doing at overtime, like, it's been in you since you were a kid, and hosting that basketball tournament, getting the trophies, and like your mom cooking out. So that's dope to see. And shout out. I didn't know you spoke Spanish. I know when we met, you told me you did the study abroad in Spain, and you spoke a little bit, but you got the whole minor and everything. So you're pretty fluent with it, I'd assume, no?
I was very fluent when I stayed abroad in Spain. I was so fluent, I would dream in Spanish. Now it's like it's so rusty because you don't use it, you lose it. But you throw me in Mexico, throw me wherever for a week, I'm good. I got no
No
concerns.
doubt. And you know what's so interesting too, especially since overtime is involved within the football space, and growing that within the youth demographic, but like, within Mexico, the rate of participation in football is growing like exponentially, as opposed to the rates of participation in like affluent America, where those like rates are decreasing because, like, you know, concerns with health and things of that nature. Like, the Hispanic demographic is like taking off. Have y'all ever looked into that within overtime in terms of that demographic in football?
I don't think we looked at that
Mhm.
specifically in terms of Mexico, but I would say that we believe football, and particularly 7-on-7, is just an area that is so ripe for growth. The NFL is investing a lot in non-contact football and things of that nature, but 7-on-7 is just this incredible space where literally every top athlete that is going to Texas, going to Michigan, going to Alabama is playing 7-on-7 football in the summer. But traditionally, there just hasn't been a ton of media coverage about it from our standpoint, content, creation, and making it just kind of an elevated spotlight. So that's where we came in and did our first event last June in Vegas, and it just did incredibly well for us. And we're definitely doubling down on the 7-on-7 space for football.
Absolutely, man. No, like you said, the NFL is pouring a lot of money into the non-contact side of it, like with regards to flag and other things. But like, I'm curious, man, because I want to watch. Like 7-on-7 is really fun in terms of the pace and things of that nature. Like, where can we tune into the 7-on-7 content that Overtime provides?
Yeah, we have a few different accounts. Overtime Season, which is our basically football hub of all of our content. We have OT7 specific accounts on every account that you would follow, and then if you go to our YouTube page on Overtime Season and OT7, you'll see a ton of highlights, a ton of packages, the full broadcast for all those events, and it's just super different because
Absolutely.
we have a combination of football experts, but also YouTubers and things like that, streamers who are giving you the content and the analysis. So it feels very of the audience.
Absolutely, man. No, that's dope, and I'll definitely drop those links there below for people to tune in. But back to the Michigan Sports Business Conference, man. So you saw like a lot of maybe nepotism from some of your peers in terms of like, oh, I got this internship because my family knows somebody. So you wanted to kind of democratize opportunity for other people trying to break into the space. So that was like a big reason why you started the Sports Business Conference.
Well, I would say there was a motivation for me because I knew that I could not get access to the content that was out there, right? Like as a student who didn't have any money, who worked a work study job, who, did an internship, unpaid internship for the athletic department, similar to you, I just didn't have the resources. So if I wanted to go to MIT Sloan, which was, I think at the time, probably $1,000 plus ticket, or SBJ or whatever it may be, like all those are great entities, but it just wasn't possible. Like I had to turn down internships in New York because I couldn't afford to live there. So I think one of the things there was a variety of things, but one of the things for me was that I definitely want this to be accessible. So from the start, we've always tried to do very accessible ticket pricing when we could definitely charge a lot more for the content and the quality of the speakers, but we want students to be able to attend without a burden. Now we need to cover our costs, and it's a nonprofit, and there's cost to running it. But that was always a fundamental element. It's like, how do we get sponsors, enough sponsorship, enough school participation in order to make this ticket accessible to students? The other thing was that, if you want to go work in accounting or finance, the pathway to get a job is very direct, right? You do an internship, you do these interviews on campus. These companies like Deloitte hires 20 plus people from the business school every year. In sports, it's just not like that, as we know. It's a little more off cycle, it's a little less traditional. So how do we bring all these speakers, these people who are hiring, and put them in front of students and give the students the opportunity to network? Because not everybody's going to be like me, who's going to reach out to everyone they're interested in on LinkedIn, right? How do you give them the opportunity to shake hands with Kevin Warren? That was our theme the first year, shake hands, because even Stephen Ross himself, Jeff Blau, who was his number 2, he met him in a classroom, and it was just through, being a student, being a high performing student, and they just shook hands and had that conversation, and then he became, his number 2. So that was always a thought around MSBC, was quality content that's on par with any conference you see in the industry, giving students the experience to network and make connections and hopefully get jobs, and just making it very accessible, especially if you're younger in your career. You can see all the different pathways into the industry and then kind of start to develop, okay, which route would I want to go?
Absolutely, man. No, powerful wisdom there in terms of the two things that'll help you get into the industry, right? Networking and internships. And I love the theme that y'all set up in terms of shake hands. A lot of times they say it's not what you know, but who you know. But I believe it's a strong combination of both, right? But that's dope that you were able to build that out and see the impact it's had on students years later. How did it feel to go back this past month and be at the conference and see how it's grown and see all the impact, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's always great. Like you can never really beat MSBC weekend for me. I mean, I think usually it's fun and you kind of just really seeing like the students grow from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is one of the most special things, is that they just gain so much experience and confidence and they're so proud of what they pulled off. And then you see them get into the industry and go on to do great things. So that's one of the most rewarding things. But I just had a ton of gratitude, man. Like I'm blessed. um, when we first created MSBC, like I'm a little crazy, so I definitely was thinking like, okay, this can be something that lives longer than me. But when you see it come into fruition, and you see everything that people have done to come back, take from their lives, give back, sit on the board, be an ambassador, be a speaker, like you really just are grateful for all the energy and effort everyone's put in to make this special.
Absolutely, man. No, that's incredible that you're able to experience that. And that's kind of my idea with this podcast, man, is like, like you said, accounting, finance, a lot of these other more traditional industries, there's a clear pathway for how you get there, right? Whereas the sports industry, the entertainment industry as a whole is a lot more, it's kind of more of a gray area, like in terms of how you get there. So I appreciate people like yourself, taking time to give insight in terms of like, here's how I got to overtime, here's how I got to Gatorade. And that shows people a roadmap for how to get there. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate that, man. But I know we only got so much time, a lot of big moves happening for overtime. So I know you gotta run here later. But I want to get into like, how'd you get to PepsiCo, man? And what was that whole experience like working with Gatorade?
Yeah. So like I said, I fell in love with marketing early in my career. I did an internship with the athletic department. I was in the process of starting MSBC. I also volunteered on everything. Like when game day came to campus, I volunteered. Like I just really was soaking up opportunities, doing a ton of informational interviews. And luckily, PepsiCo recruited at the business school. And one of the guys who I had recruited to work on MSBC originally, he worked at PepsiCo in New York the summer before. So I talked to him. I got a lot of keys on how they kind of go about the interview process. And then also, I give a lot of love to John Shea, who was the head of sports marketing. He was an early supporter of MSBC as well. But just through doing well in the interview and being able to credibly talk to the fact that, no, I'm not just a sports fan. Of course, I love sports, but like, look at what I'm building, look at what I'm doing. And I think that really translated well in the fact that I just really love marketing. And I could work on any brand, but Gatorade happens to be my dream job. So I was lucky to land at Gatorade. I mean, it's an iconic brand. It's a brand we all grew up knowing and loving, and being able to help shape some of the initiatives and mold some at a young age was just incredible. Like I couldn't have asked for a better start to my career. When I was an intern, I wasn't even 21. I was the youngest person. I was the only undergrad out of 10. There were 9 MBAs coming from the likes of Harvard, NYU, Stanford, whatever, U Chicago, you name it. And I just kind of went in with the mentality of like, I'm going to just be the best. Like, I don't care what it takes, right? I'm just going to work hard. I'm going to, be a good person, which is underrated. I'm going to meet everyone. I'm going to just, we had a final presentation after 10 weeks. I remember it was Lollapalooza weekend in Chicago. It was summer. It was beautiful. I could hear from my apartment the Red Hot Chili Peppers performing. And I was sitting in there for like hours and hours just going over my presentation.
Uh,
And then by the time the presentation came, it was just easy. And then every question that somebody asked, I had to answer. It was either in the appendix or I just knew. And they thought, little things that might have thrown me off, I just had it. So I did well. They wanted to bring me back. And I was fortunate enough to come back full time. I did 5 years, a couple on the product innovation side, which I loved because it really helped hone my skill set of like taking an idea and bringing it into reality, even in a big system, which is not easy. So that was super cool, working with design, understanding like how products get made, from insight into the locker room, insight on the field, to okay, this is how we're going to prioritize it, working with the scientists, working with the nutritionists and everything else, and coming up with something to see it in retail. That was amazing. I spent 2 years on the global team, and my Spanish definitely came in handy there because I was working a lot with the Latin American team. They're our biggest market outside the US. Um, but doing a lot of international soccer, a lot of campaigns and commercials. Again, launching a new brand, Gatorade FC, our soccer specific product at the time, working on our new technology and implementing that with a lot of the international soccer clubs was incredible time. And then last but not least, I went over to the digital and social team and worked for one of my biggest mentors, Kenny Mitchell and Michael Smith, both of them who've helped me a ton in my career. Um, that's where I was basically anything that kind of touched the internet from a social perspective, I was either leading or touching it, and really focusing on kind of revamping our voice and getting us in touch with Gen Z. And that's, of course, when I found Overtime, right? Is organically, we had an amazing project with Twitter where we went to go create live broadcasts for Zion Williamson's high school games, RJ Barrett's high school games, a lot of other basketball stars, Bol, who's now popping back up. We went to his high school. And I got to tell you, seeing Zion live in high school was something different. Like
Oh,
it was pretty crazy.
I
Yeah,
bet it's
it
like
was insane.
I don't know if you've seen Pat McAfee's intro he did in New Orleans, where he's like, "This guy has been dunking on little white boys since he was 14." It is so crazy, bro. No, that's a wild journey though, man. That's an incredible journey, and I think like early on, and you telling that story, you made a good point in terms of like you could credibly talk to the fact that you're not only a sports fan, because I think a lot of people get caught up in like, oh, I'm passionate about the sports industry, or I love the sports industry, right? Where it's like that's not enough, because in this space everyone's passionate, right? You need to be able to speak to what you're tactically able to do, like you in terms of like, I'm a good marketer. I love marketing and I could market for any brand, but I'd want it to be this brand, Gatorade, within the sports space that I grew up watching, the Williams sisters commercials with Gatorade, or the MJ commercials with Gatorade, right? Like all those big moments. So I think that's a big differentiator that if anyone's listening to this podcast, you could take away is like, find ways to speak to what you can do for the brand, and not only the fact that you're passionate about that brand or that field. So I think that's like really great insight from you, man. And that's dope that you got to touch so many different things, from product innovation, how to bring ideas to reality, even in a bigger company, which can get, kind of bogged down in the bureaucracy of like a bigger company. So it's like, that's dope. And then utilizing the Spanish, bro, on the Latin on the global team, interacting with Latin America. That's dope. I had actually never heard of Gatorade FC, man.
Yeah. No, it was an international thing that we did. It was never really a US focused product, but it was super cool. I got a lot more respect for being able to sit in a meeting. They only speak Spanish, or maybe do a little salsa, or show my skills on the pitch a little bit. That gave me some good respect down there. So I had great times working with them.
Respect.
But yeah, man, I think the number one thing you talk about, like showing them what you can do. Right now, it's never been easier to start something. That's the thing. Like I started MSBC, and I think that was probably the number one signal to them, is that if you can go start something from scratch, like, yeah, you can work in our system and build. Like before anything else, you said I was a great marketer. I wasn't a great marketer. I barely knew anything, right? I worked for the athletic department, like holding the lights before the basketball game and handing out lapel pins at the football game and doing a lot of odd jobs and dirty work. And it was fun. Don't get me wrong, but like that doesn't make me a great marketer. But what I could do is I could go come up with an idea. I could create a vision, put it on paper, get people behind it to work with me, go get it funded, stand something up. And now as a student, like this digital landscape, you started a podcast, it could be an Instagram account. Like if you want to come work for Overtime, then why don't you start an Instagram account while you're in school and make it pop in? And NIL is a whole different space that we didn't talk about, right? You got all these athletes on campus, work with them. And then that's going to show anyone that, okay, you can really build, you can do something, versus someone who just says, I want to work there, I want to work here. Like that's probably the number one thing that I get excited about, is if I'm interviewing someone, is if it could be a nonprofit, it could be a for-profit, it could be something that failed, it could be small, it could be big, but that's just like a huge signal to me that they're going to be good, is if they have tried to start something.
So like whether it succeeds or fails, it's that initiative to show that you're willing to start something and have taken careful consideration into all the different lens and scopes that you need to take out to do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you learn by doing. You learn by doing. And class is great. You got to have the fundamentals, especially I tell people all the time, like accounting, finance. I don't do those things. Or I do a little bit on Hella Awkward, but like the fundamentals of understanding all of those aspects of business is super important.
Absolutely.
But I think more so is like the EQ, emotional intelligence, like that is huge. Being on a team, right? Working with people, having people who want to do deals with you over and over, people who like to hang out with you, like that is huge. And then having the initiative to know like how to start something and learn along the way and not get discouraged by failures or by bumps in the road, and just to be able to keep pushing through with persistence. Like those, most of the things that make someone good at work are not things that you learn in the classroom, in my opinion.
Absolutely, man. No, a lot of great points there. And especially on, you made this point very early in the conversation, like, being a good person is very underrated in today's world. And that goes in line with EQ, emotional intelligence, especially within the sports industry, right? A lot of us are former athletes. Like you should know how to work within a team environment, how to take initiative, how to lead, how to, follow and support when need be. So I think all of that is extremely important, man. And to your Instagram point a minute ago, like that's in the works next for me is chopping these long form conversations up into short form clips, throwing in the subtitles and putting that out, on IG, Twitter, LinkedIn, you know what I mean? Because that short form content is what games the algorithm and piques people's interest to then go listen to the long form greater beast. Um, but yeah, man, no, like EQ is so important and people sleep on it. And I think finance is to your point as well. Like even if you're not going to do that stuff, that's the foundation of everything. For overtime, for example, you got Bezos investing, you got KD, which I got his jersey on right now, since he's also an investor in overtime. But it's like, at the end of the day, what's the bottom line? You got to understand, even if you're not in Excel doing the finances, you got to understand how the finances come into the equation, how marketing is trying to drive revenue, and that's going to affect the bottom line. So I think, to your point, that's even if you're in marketing or some other facet of the business, you got to know that stuff, even if you're not directly doing it, which you are with Hella Awkward, which I wanted to get into here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, man. I think I've centered my career around understanding business and being a builder. And for me, having a general understanding of how the entire business comes together is what I care about. Now, there are certain people who are specialists and are really good at what they do, and that's also a great route to take. So you can be the best designer in the world, or you could be the best just kind of person in Excel. You can be really good as a specialist. You can be the best social media person out there, and that's all great. But I think even if you are doing that, it's still good to understand the whole ecosystem and why you're doing something, or why what you do creates value in the broader entity. So that's kind of been my philosophy, and what I continue to try to build towards.
For sure, the whole ecosystem. So before jumping up to overtime, man, what was like a favorite moment or memory from your time at Gatorade?
Oh man, that's a hard one because there's so many good ones. Yeah, there's so many good ones. I remember one particular time we had a shoot with Usain Bolt in Jamaica, in Kingston. And I was, again, very young at the time, maybe 23, 24. And I just got to take a leadership role on the global portion of that. And that was a really cool experience, to be able to brief Usain and work with him, but also just like being Kingston, where he's royalty, and kind of experience that. And I took the whole production crew to this like rinky dink jerk chicken spot that ended up being fire. But like, so it was just like a really cool trip and experience. Another one that comes to mind would be going to El Clasico, um, in Barcelona, and also working with Messi on a few shoots. So there's a lot of great moments. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that comes to mind the most is just like the incredible people that I work with and I'm still friends with, and that have either stayed or gone on to do amazing things, that we still all see each other as family. Like that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day.
That's dope, man, that you were able to experience that early in your career and like, make those relationships with those people in their careers, and like, maybe they're still at Gatorade or they're at other places, but see how the growth happened and just have those memories like eating that jerk chicken, which I love jerk chicken. So I can't imagine over there in Kingston, you know what I mean? But like meeting some of the goats like a Bolt or a Messi, and being at those legendary sports moments where you could just feel the energy, like El Clásico, like how much that means to the people there and the rivalry of Madrid and Barca. That's dope, man. So talk to me about this jump to overtime, man. What inspired it? What are you doing now? And what do you see for the future over there, man?
Well, like I said, I was at Gatorade running social. I ran into overtime on this project, and once I saw the results, I just knew that there was something really special going on. One, the energy of the people working with Zach, working with Tom. Zach's the co-founder who was my boss for the first 4 years, and then Tom, who was running social. Like I just knew that it was different. And then once I started doing my research and seeing that David Stern was on the seed fund round, once I saw Dan Porter, the co-founder and CEO, his background, and even just like look at his LinkedIn, it's pretty special. Just how he tells his own story. Like you could just see that there was something really unique. And then once I kind of made the call to Zach and said, "Look, I want to work for you guys." There wasn't a role carved out. There wasn't anything specific. They had just hired a head of sales who I had known from Snapchat, Alex Grant. I had helped him with some intel that I knew because I was working with them, and it all came back full circle. Is that Alex felt like he needed some help. He was a lone guy trying to go get revenue. And then I met with Dan and Zach and all the other people. Mark Cohn is our chief content officer, and kind of convinced them that I could add value in any way possible. And what I realized when I got there was that immediately meant brand partnerships. I mean, I was doing other things. I was touching like how can we potentially make consumer products and how do we do collabs with streetwear brands and doing some other cool stuff. But I was like, okay, we got to get some revenue in the door, improve brand partnerships. So my first year and change was like just kind of telling our story, getting out there, basically doing everything around sales, which I never considered myself a seller. But it came pretty easy to me because it just felt like I was talking about something I was passionate about and telling a story. The same thing I would do at Gatorade if I wanted to do this project with Overtime, or if I wanted to, do this specific project with whoever it was. I would go sell it around internally, or go pitch it to the CMO, or go pitch it to my boss. So that's just what it felt like, and I ended up being pretty good at it. We did our first huge deal with Converse. It was this big event called the Takeover 1.0. It was a special inflection point in our company. That eventually led to the idea around Overtime Elite. Once we kind of saw a lot of we had built a lot of relationships with athletes and their families, heard a lot about some of the pain points, and we thought launching a league could be something special. And I give Dan and Zach a lot of credit for taking that swing when a lot of people didn't believe that would make sense. But we made it happen collectively as Overtime, and I was then transitioning more into like a strategy and BD role, where I was doing basically any deal that was outside of brand partnerships, still working with brand partnerships, but also working heavily on launching Overtime Elite, working heavily on what new areas could be, like international expansion, and doing licensing and helping our apparel business. And then now thinking towards kind of what are the next opportunities in the next verticals we should be thinking about.
Absolutely. That's dope, man. So I'm curious, what is it like starting a league from scratch essentially with OTE? And like I know y'all have, you guys just signed like the number one 2024 recruit to OTE, multiple top 2023 recruits. The twins are doing their thing, they're balling out. Like what is it like, trying to drive, revenue opportunities and things of that nature for OTE? And I ask because like at the marketing agency I'm at, we have a client who's like a young sports league, and we're trying to get sponsors for them and things of that nature. So a lot of people are like curious about like, if you're this younger entity, how do you not only pitch the recruits, but also like pitch sponsors and things of that nature? Like how does that whole process look?
Well, we generate a lot of belief based on our past success, based on who was on our cap table, based on who we partnered with, and a lot of trust with people. But the biggest thing is that we built a community of, now we have 70 million fans and followers and community members across social. So we already had an audience. We didn't go say, hey, here's an idea to build a league and let's go find an audience. We already had an audience. And that's a major differentiation point to most leagues that start. And therefore, we're able to go to brands and say, no, we can give you ROI on this investment based on our own distribution. And that's a bet we made on ourselves in year one, and intentionally didn't go to market around media rights. And obviously now we're super excited to be working with Amazon because it amplifies what we're doing in a big way, and giving us streaming, and then plus the power of our own social. So I would say that was the number one thing. But yeah, we just worked really furiously. We were in the lab working on it for a little bit, but by the time we announced in the New York Times that we were going to do this league, within 6 months after that, we kind of went full force on building our venue, hiring the whole staff in Atlanta, and major kudos and credit to the players who committed at that time, who helped build the foundation to what Overtime Elite is becoming.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to see what you guys are building in terms of like you're not only setting up these players for success on the court with, everyone who's leading player development over there, but you're also setting them up for how to be a professional outside of being a professional NBA player, being a professional in a business setting, social media training, financial literacy classes, things of that nature that are more relevant to the real world of business. And you're not acting like, I feel like the traditional system, NCAA, going to play D1 at the collegiate levels, like, you kind of try to act like you're a student, but you're really not. We all know you're going to be there one and done. You're going into a totally different realm. So I think that it's cool that you guys are, carving out that space. And I know, it's going to be a massive success, and I'm excited to see that continue to build. But I want to ask, man, since we're going to wrap it up here, any last words of advice for those trying to break into the industry, man?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, networking and internships, those are the two standard things that you just got to know. But really is like, I think underlying that is the hunger and persistence, right? Like, you know, that's what I had. That's what I had that differentiated me from a lot of different people. Like I got rejected a million times on internships or jobs I applied to. It's just a fact. Like everybody does. I applied blind to a lot of things. I probably sent out of 1,000, LinkedIn messages I sent, maybe a third of them got replied to, right? Or maybe a third of those I got on a call with somebody, and maybe a third of those I built a relationship with somebody. But at the end of the day, I always had the persistence and the belief to keep pushing beyond that. And that's what you got to have because, again, I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. I went straight to, well, in college, I went to, my dream school. I went to my dream job. I started MSBC, which has been a dream. The experiences I had at Gatorade are incredible. And then I got to Overtime when at a time where a lot of people in the industry didn't know what it was and were very curious why I had made that move. And that's paid off tenfold to be somewhere where innovation is really valued. So I would say just have that persistence, have that grind, and bet on yourself continuously. And the bigger the bet you make, the bigger the reward and payoff can be in the future.
Absolutely. So persistence and belief to persevere the rejection and the doubt that comes along the journey. That is dope, man. And it's dope to see, how it's paid off for you, that move, and the great things y'all are going to continue to build. I know I'll be tuning in to the stuff on Amazon Prime with regards to OTE and Overtime, OT7 and all the stuff y'all got going on with the soccer partnerships ahead of the World Cup. So very hyped to see what you guys continue to do, man. I really appreciate your time. Where can everyone find you, man, and follow your content, tune into your stuff? I know you run a company outside of this named Hella Awkward. Where can people find that as well?
Yeah, I'm Overtime Brandon on pretty much all the social platforms. So follow me there. You'll see a lot of boxing content. I'm getting ready for my first fight on November 19th. It's for charity.
You're boxing?
Yeah, I'm fighting. It's an official USA boxing fight. But it's for charity. It's for give kids a dream through my gym. They sponsor young local Brooklyn kids to be able to get into boxing from underprivileged backgrounds. So super hyped for that. And then yeah, Hella Awkward is a game, conversation starter game that me, my sister, my girlfriend, we started during the pandemic, which has just been a super fun project. My sister really gets a lot of the credit for running the show every day. But we're hyped for that, and we're going to be in Target in Q1 So definitely support. You can check us out at Hella Awkward Cards, on Instagram, on our site, on Amazon. You can buy it on Prime as well. So thank you. Appreciate it.
That is dope. I'll definitely be buying some Hella Awkward Cards, and congrats on getting into Target, man. That is game changer, man. Just success on all fronts, man, with Overtime and Hella Awkward. We really appreciate the insight and the wisdom here, Brandon, and wish you guys the best of luck. And we're all hyped to see you guys continue to grow, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. And obviously it's Go Blue, but I'm an adopted Longhorn now that I went down there. So I'll give you a little hook 'em as well.
Hey, there we go. Doing this podcast with yourself, and then one with Fef, and being close to Fef, if as long as Michigan ain't playing UT, I'll be a Wolverine. I'll hop on and back the blue. But yeah, man, hook 'em. It's cool to see KD, an investor with you guys, and how y'all partner with the boardroom and 35 Ventures and things of that nature as well. But thank you, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode in its entirety. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation between me and Brandon half as much as we enjoyed making it for you guys, and that you gained at least half as much wisdom as I did from Brandon. Brandon is an awesome dude, succeeding in his space, and even more importantly, being a great person while doing it, and paving the way for others like myself to get there and then pay it forward to the next generation as well. And that's what it's all about, ladies and gents. But the links to tune in to Brandon's stuff is down below, as well as some more links to tap into the OTE content, the Amazon Prime games that they've got streaming coming out, super exciting stuff. And of course, the card game. I will definitely be buying a set of Hella Awkward cards. We're gonna, maybe sip on some brews, bust out the wine, here maybe this weekend, and play that card game. It'll be a great time. You guys definitely do the same. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, drop a like down below, leave a rating on Apple or Spotify. A review on Apple Podcasts would mean a tremendous amount to us. Thank you, everybody involved. Y'all have a good week.
Don't be such a smart aleck.